We've prioritized transparency with our clients, right? Communication throughout every step of the process. And so one of the things when we meet people for the first time is we ask the question, has anyone taken the time to explain to you the recent settlement and what it means? Because most people, first of all, we all know that the media has a tendency to kind of exaggerate what has been going on with the NAR settlement. And while there are elements of truth in what's going on out there, I think there's a lot of misrepresentation about what the lawsuit meant and what it means. And I think, again, it diminishes the value that an advisor plays.
Welcome back to the MegaTeam Mastermind podcast, where we interview successful real estate MegaTeam leaders who will inspire you by sharing real-world stories of success and failure. Stories that are about building profitable real estate teams that make an impact and leave a legacy. I'm your host, John Tiller, and today we've got Jason Mudd joining us from Westport, Connecticut, just outside of New York City. He's managing partner of Cindy Raney and Team with Coldwell Banker. They are a micro team with MegaTeam results. They have 5 advisors doing about $100 million in volume in just 40 units. Jason, hey, thanks so much for joining us today, man.
Hey, John, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you being here. Hey, so why don't we start out by you telling me a little bit about key parts of your story and journey,
Sure.
What got you to real estate, and you have a relationship beyond business partners with Cindy. Tell us about that too.
Yeah, sure. So we are a husband and wife team, and we're still married. So I guess there's something's working. So we actually have a little bit of, I think, a unique path together. Cindy has been, for over 20 years, a very successful solo practitioner in Fairfield County, which is where we live. And I have, for the majority of my career, been in the world of banking. So I've been a banking executive. I left the world of banking in 2018 and did some work in some other areas that I have great interest in, which is in the nonprofit sector. And then in 2020, we formed a partnership together. The idea was trying to build a team within real estate. And so the two of us started in 2020, just the two of us, doing between 15 and 20 million a year, and have grown it subsequently in the last 4 years. We now have a team of 8 doing close to 100 million. We've exceeded 101 year. And we've got some other relationships, right? So we've got partners on a PR team. We've got a marketing arm. We've got a creative arm. So they aren't officially part of Cindy Raney and Team, but we wouldn't be where we are without them. So it's important for me to make sure that people know that we have great partnerships outside of the core Cindy Raney and Team. And so we've been very fortunate that I get to work with my wife and hopefully bring some unique perspective to the business coming from a different industry.
I love that. So tell us a little bit about the roles that differ between what you do and what Cindy does. Obviously, you've got a different background that can bring some unique things. Tell us about the lanes that you each have and what you cross over in those lanes and what you tend to stay in your own lanes, and how you guys divide up that work as leading the team.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is incredibly important, is really understanding your lane, right? Mm-hmm. Understanding where you can add value, where you're going to be the strongest. And so I would say for me, there are really kind of 2 key areas that I focus on. And one of them is sort of the team building, sort of the organizational structure and the processes. And the second thing that I really focus on is our vision. Like, where are we going as a team and why? And I think those 2 key components that I focus on are all driven by the third bucket, which is what we deliver on, how does it benefit the consumer? How does it benefit the consumer experience? And so we're really thinking about, when we add team members, add components to the business processes, is it at the end of the day something that benefits the end user, which is our consumer, right? And so I'm constantly thinking sort of big picture strategically. Cindy really spends and dedicates the majority of her time to being with the client. And then hopefully what I'm able to help put into place, she's able to then take to that next level and deliver that, what we call, hopefully, a memorable client experience, so that they walk away saying, I really experienced something that was different from something I've experienced before. We're trying to create that memorable experience for people. And then we have obviously other people on the team, as I mentioned, who really we couldn't do this business without, whether it's PR, marketing, our creative teams. But really for Cindy and myself, it's very divided in terms of where we stay. I'm in the office, largely speaking, with occasional exceptions, and Cindy's largely out talking to clients.
That makes perfect sense. So you mentioned obviously a banking history, and also it sounds like maybe it was a passion project for the nonprofit. And tell us about how your banking history, your history in the banking world applies, what you've been able to bring here, and what is different, like what doesn't apply. And then also, are you still supporting that nonprofit, and is your business a part of that, or is that something that you wrapped up and you do different things?
Yeah, so let me tackle the nonprofit space. So we both, of Cindy and myself, believe very strongly in giving back to the community. We think it's really our obligation. We've been very fortunate to grow up or to live in these communities, to be financially in a place where we are. And so we're very grateful for that. And so while we've spent time on a variety of different boards, currently I am the executive chair for Yale New Haven Bridgeport Hospital, which is really the primary hospital that services our community. I know most people, when they think of Connecticut, tend to think of towns like Greenwich and Westport, which there is an awful lot of wealth, and most of Fairfield County is incredibly wealthy. So we, again, very fortunate to live here. But we also have towns like Bridgeport where there are a lot of underserved people, and Bridgeport Hospital does a magnificent job servicing both communities. And so we feel really fortunate to have them in our backyard. So we spend a lot of our time, and I spend a lot of my energy on Bridgeport Hospital. I think in terms of your second question, which was how has it helped? And I don't know that it was necessarily anything specific to banking. What I will say, John, is that I think it allows me to come to the real estate business industry with no preconceived notions of how things are done, with a mindset of challenging sort of what is the status quo, why do people do what they do, and whatever processes are in place, can we question them, and ultimately, why are we doing them? Let's not just do them because that's the way it's been done. And so I think that sort of has been where it's really benefited me. And there have been multiple times where we have changed our business model based on what I've seen is what I will call kind of a standard practice. It doesn't mean that everybody does it this way. It's just what we see more of than not. And how do we tweak it to, I think, again, ultimately deliver a better experience for our consumer?
Man, what a timely entry into real estate to have that fresh set of eyes, certainly a successful initial career that you learned a lot about how to lead people and how to give back and how to run a business, but to come in with a fresh set of eyes to an industry who is ripe for change. Give us a specific example of something that you feel like you came in and did exactly that. Maybe it was you. I loved how you said maybe not everybody's doing it this way, but it's a standard practice, and we've challenged that and said, hey, why are we doing it this way?
Yeah. So one recent example that comes to mind is, so when I first partnered with Cindy, I did go through and get my licenses, and a lot of my initial foray into the business was trying to understand what goes on in the life of an agent advisor day to day. So I went to a lot of open houses, some of which were performed by Cindy and many of which were not, many of which were performed by other agents, advisors in the field. And what I noticed, and again, I'm being very general here, so I don't mean to insult anybody, but what I found is that there were a lot of these open houses that were often very robotic in how they were delivered, right? It was a person standing at the kitchen, at the island with a bunch of sheets. And if a client came in and asked, they could answer questions around square footage and around bedrooms and bathrooms and taxes. But what I didn't see happening a lot of, I was viewing it through the lens of a consumer, I didn't see that was really terribly motivating. And what I didn't hear was, why was this house why did the people who lived in this house love it so much? What was it about this property? Was it the memories they created raising their kids here? Was it the fact that they were able to entertain friends, family for holidays or for birthdays, whatever it may be? And so when I thought about it, and we started doing them ourselves, I started to realize, like, look, this is the way and we were doing it that way as we built our team. And so what I asked and have challenged our team to do is, if 4 open houses and treat it as though you were selling your own house. And how would you be in a room if it were your own house and you were trying to sell it to somebody coming through the door? And I can promise you, you would A, know everything there is to know about that house. B, you would be much more emotional in terms of what you're selling the house on. You wouldn't focus on the square footage. You wouldn't focus on the bedrooms. You would focus on all the memories and everything great that happened in that house. And so it's a big ask. I get it. We're asking our agents to put themselves in the shoes of the person who is trusting us to sell their home. But I think from an experience standpoint, when we talk to our client, they feel much more confident that we have their best interest at heart, because we really do. So the questions we ask them to understand, what is your favorite room in the house? What is it about your experience here that you loved? We can then share that with the audience that comes through. And I think that's one example of where we've tried to take what was sort of an existing process of just thanks for coming in. And if you've got any questions, here's the sheet on the house, to really making sure that the message is being conveyed, like I said, as though it were your own house. Because John, if you were selling your own house, you'd be incredibly passionate in how you deliver your message to whomever comes through. And we have to treat every house as though it were our own. So that's one of the ways we've been trying to do things differently.
Man, that's super cool. You've just sparked all kinds of ways that we could go even further with that. Stories sell, right? It's not the square footage, to your point, that sells, it's the story. And right. So I wonder, even just thinking along those lines, I'm thinking about my own team and the teams that I coach. What if we did, as part of our listing process, when we go to do photos and video, we sit down and do an interview with the owner? And maybe even the video doesn't end up making it anywhere, but at least the agent, the open house agent, can say, this is what the owner said. These are the owner's words about where they raised their kid and how they loved this setup, because all their kids' friends could come over and play here, and everybody in the neighborhood got raised together here. And best case is the owner, that video does come out high quality, and you play it on a loop on the TV during the open house. Like, how cool would that be?
It's a terrific idea.
Man, I love it. I love it. And I love that you're challenging the way that things are done, because clearly the industry is getting challenged as a whole about the way things are done. And there's going to be the people that adapt to that and stay on the front, and will actually do more business as the changes come. And then there's people who will also get left behind. Talking about that, tell me about, has the NAR settlement and the changes with the settlement, has that affected your business at all? And whether it has or not, what do you expect for the future? And what are you telling your agents and your clients?
Yeah, I think the short answer is it hasn't impacted our business. And I think primarily it's because I'm sure we've been very deliberate about being transparent. We've prioritized transparency with our clients, right? Communication throughout every step of the process. And so one of the things when we meet people for the first time is we ask the question, has anyone taken the time to explain to you the recent settlement and what it means? Because most people, first of all, we all know that the media has a tendency to kind of exaggerate what has been going on with the NAR settlement. And while there are elements of truth in what's going on out there, I think there's a lot of misrepresentation about what the lawsuit meant and what it means. And I think, again, it diminishes the value that an advisor plays. I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but we play an incredibly important role. A home is a treasured asset, both financially for people in terms of what kind of decision it is. It's typically somebody's largest single asset. And we all know that shelter and providing for your family, how important that is. You can't put a dollar figure on that. We do play a very important role, and to have it minimized and to say that all agents are created equally and everybody, they get overpaid to do their job. That's the kind of stuff that really frustrates me, because there are a lot of really smart, hardworking, diligent agents, advisors out there who are doing magnificent work for their clients. And that's the story that should be told. That's the tangent part. To answer your question, though, I do not see NAR and the impact of NAR dramatically changing our business because of our transparency. I also don't think, because of the market we're in, it dramatically changes things. Right now, at the end of the day, the way I would best describe it to people is, if Waze, when you try to say, I'm going from my house to a destination, Waze takes you from point A to point B. Now what's happened is we've hit a traffic snag, and Waze is rerouting me a little bit. and I'm still going to get to my end destination. I'm just going to get there in a little bit of a different route, right? So I think it's really important that if you stay out in front with your clients and let them know how the commission structure is, it hasn't changed in our market. And as was in the past, sellers never had to offer compensation to buyers. We have not seen that change since the NAR settlement. There has been discussion. We have had sellers ask us if they should be offering, and it's our job, though. That's our job as advisors, is to give advice, right? So I think at the end of the day, we're not saying a whole lot because we've been really proactive with our communication, and I don't foresee anything changing in the near future, right? We'll have to see what comes down the pike, but for right now, I don't see massive changes happening in our market. I can't speak for a country.
Got it. So your team has experienced exponential, you could call it explosive growth in the last few years since you and Cindy kind of partnered together on that.
Yeah.
Tell me about, what do you attribute that to? What are the biggest things, the biggest needle movers that when you came in, you partnered together, you reimagined, re-envisioned the team and began to execute and have now had success executing? What are the biggest factors that move the needle for you?
Yeah, so I think there's several things. I think the first is coaching. Like, we have reached some guidance from people who've been doing this a long time, and so it's also opened up a network to us, not only within Coldwell Banker, but within other teams to really understand what best practices are in the market, so you kind of can learn. Because I think that's the best way to really run a business, is to see what other successful people are doing and see what you can do to emulate it. So that's first. I think two, we have had a very deliberate focus on moving Cindy and our team upstream in terms of price points. So, our average price point has gone up more than 2x from when we started the business. And that, again, very intentional. We are as I mentioned, we live in a market that you have the luxury of being able to sell 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, $15 million homes if you're in the right part of Fairfield County. You don't have to rely on units as a means to getting a large dollar volume. So that was the second component. And I think really taking our business and looking at what we can do from an advertising standpoint, from a PR standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a video standpoint, right? All the things that really successful teams do well, we've really tried to make sure that we get our message out. And our message has been that we are an advisory team first. We just happen to help people make decisions on real estate, right? We are not a transactional shop. We are not here to buy and sell homes for people. We're here to give them great advice and let them make smart choices as a consequence. So I think that, and then look, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we've had, because of COVID, we have had a lot of people from New York City come to Connecticut, which quite frankly I'd be very dismissive if I didn't say we were fortunate in our timing. And I hate to use the word fortunate and COVID in the same sentence, but it did bring business to our market. There were a lot of people who previously didn't want to commute to New York City from where we live, who have now said, because of the work from home aspect, that they can do that. And it's brought people our way, which is, again, that is absolutely, it's helped our business also.
Well, that's fantastic. It is nice when the market helps, but just like we can't blame the market when we're not doing well or it's not doing well, we also can't give the market all the credit when we do well. You said something really fascinating that I think a lot of people will be interested to hear, because I think a lot of us set out to do this, but very few actually are successful in this, and that's doubling your average price point. Everybody wants to sell a higher priced home and increase their average sales price. You have successfully doubled that. Tell us about what were like the keys to doing that and getting that done.
Yeah. So look, I have some suggestions, and then I will give you sort of our experience and what's happened, and some of it has been good fortune. Look, as I mentioned, I came from the world of banking, so financial services, and largely serving high net worth clients. And so some of our initial business that Cindy and I were able to get came from that network. And that immediately took some of the price points that Cindy had and increased them quite significantly. And then as a consequence, that enabled us to get some more listings. And so, for example, Cindy currently right now has a listing on for just under $12 million. So if any of your viewers want to buy a $12 million house, please send them our way. But that was really a relationship that I had developed for many years in the world of banking that just came about, right? So it's examples like that, but that won't be the case for everybody. And so what I would say, my advice would be on how to double your price points is find the price point that you want. So if you're taking it from $1 million to $2 million or 500 to $1 million, it doesn't matter what the number is. What I would suggest you do is make sure you know everything there is to know about that space in that market. So if it's $1 million home in your market, know everything there is to know around the trends, around the price points, like where are those houses going for? Are they going at ask, above ask, under ask? How many days on the market are they sitting? What is driving some homes in that price range to sell faster than others, right? So it's really making sure you're the expert in that range, right? If you're going to say you want to sell $1 million homes, let's call it 800,000 to 1.2. You can create your own range, but that's my advice is creating a range around it and just being the expert. Know everything there is to know so that when somebody calls you, you can talk really intelligently about what's going on in that space of the market. And look, there is going to always be that first home that you've got to sell because there are going to be some naysayers who say, well, Jason, you haven't sold a $1 million, a $5 million, $50 million. And all of that is true when you haven't done it just yet, right? But you have to be able to say, look, you have to start somewhere. And I know as much about this market as anybody. In fact, I know more about this market right now than people who've sold homes in this market. And if you can convince somebody that you are capable and knowledgeable, they will listen to you. And so I think that would be the coaching I would give somebody who wants to double your price point is just make sure you know the market really well.
I love that. I also think that your example of coming from kind of inserting your network or inserting Cindy and your team into your network that is in this price range to start with, I think the alternative for somebody who's not coming out of a career and a network that's that way, the alternative is find a way into that network. If you're not already in that network, you probably know somebody who is. And I love your first step of get to know the market, because once you get to know the market, it's amazing how it triggers, hey, wait a minute, I know somebody, or I know somebody who knows somebody who's in this market. Yeah. And maybe I'll reach out to them to make a connection, to just say, hey, I'm working in this market now, which is true if you've done your research and you're looking into it. And yeah, that's great advice.
Well, and John, one addition just because based on what you shared is first, I would say the first price point where we got to $4 million, which was for us at that time in 2021 was huge for us. Mm-hmm. And that's actually the client that referred us to the $12 million client. So to your point about you've got to start somewhere, but these people, they tend to traffic and network with one another. And the experience with the $4 million client went well enough that they thought without question, we had the capability of selling their friend's house in that higher price range. So you're 100% right. You've got to start and understand how to leverage the network. But so what you just said, I just want to make sure that I echoed that for your followers, because I think that's spot on.
It's awesome. Awesome. So talking about technology and especially balancing technology in a luxury market that you guys work in, have you guys used AI at all? And if you are, how are you using it? And what are you not doing? What is AI not doing for you that other people may think that it should? And where does it stay? Where do you not use it? And where do you use it?
Sure. So the answer is absolutely we use AI. And in fact, I'll go so far as to say, I think it's Ben Franklin who was quoted as saying there's two certainties in life, death and taxes. And I will say, maybe with not the same certainty, that for those people who don't use AI in our space, it's not going to prove successful for you if you pass on it, because people in your market are using AI are going to go right past you, because just think about the capabilities of what AI can do. And not that hard to figure out that you're going to get left behind. So I think we are absolutely huge proponents of AI. We use it for a number of different things. We use it to help write our newsletter, which is a monthly publication. We use it to help write letters to our sphere. We use it to analyze data. We use it to take a look at trends and help it give us action items for our clients, buyers, sellers, investors. So I would say I don't know where I would put us on the spectrum of those who use AI, but I would say it's absolutely something we spend a lot of our time on daily in working with. You asked the question around what are we not using it for? Look, there are certain elements of our business that we don't use it for because of the importance of people in our business, right? I think AI is a tool that can be used to really supplement the great talent that you have, but it doesn't replace having really great people on your team. So I want to be cautious in how I present AI. I think it is a great addition to a business, but trust me, it won't take you far if you don't have great people who are on your team working with you. And so I am open to suggestions on ways that we can use AI that we're not. I feel as though right now for our business model, we're using it effectively, but we're also always exploring, and I'm always reading and trying to learn from other people. What are they doing with AI that we're not? There isn't something right now that jumps off the page from your question that I could say, but it isn't to suggest that we don't have opportunities to do more with AI. But I would absolutely tell you better be on that bandwagon.
Yeah, well, and I think what you're saying about it supplements our talent, right? It helps us to be more efficient, it supplements the relationships that we're trying to build with our clients. I love that you call your agent partners advisors, because that's their role, right? Like, it's our job to make sure, client, you have all the best information to make the best decision, not to make that decision for you. And at the same time, that's all relationship driven, and AI can do that. Can you be specific on how you're using AI to analyze trends, data trends, and or how you're using it for action items for buyers, sellers, and investors?
Sure. So, for example, we do a monthly newsletter, and as part of the newsletter, we take a look at, within Fairfield County, there are 9 luxury markets that we participate in, and each one of them is their own distinct town. And so we take a look at the data that comprises some of the key metrics that you would look at. So unit sales, days on market, list to sales ratio, new inventory. And then what we do is we create a spreadsheet that tabulates the monthly year-over-year numbers, so month over month. And then I'll plug that into ChatGPT and say, give me some analysis on the specific town. So let's just call it the town of Westport, the town of Southport. What would be some action steps that a buyer or a seller can take in this town, and why? And act as my advisor. How would I be counseling a high net worth client who's an investor to think about purchasing in Greenwich versus purchasing in Darien? And so we have built over time, we've sort of built up this repository within AI so that it really knows our voice. It knows the types of advice we're trying to bring. So it kind of takes all of the stuff that it's done in the past, and then it will generate some suggestions for us, so some action steps. So for example, it will tell us that you want to act quickly in a specific town because inventory is light. You should be pre-approved. It'll tell you the stuff that we know, right? Let me put it this way. It's not giving me an insight that you and I and your listeners don't already know. What it tells you is it does it for you very quickly. I don't have to take a look at each of the pieces of data and say, okay, within Southport, right? I plug the data in, it spits it back out, and then I can decide what of the data I want to use. So I would just say this, it is a wonderful way to save yourself time. I can analyze the data. I can look at it. I'm sure anybody who's listening, they have their own newsletters. They know how to analyze the data. They know what their markets are doing. They don't need ChatGPT or any AI source to tell them what's going on in their market. But from the capability of writing a newsletter in literally 30 seconds that then I have to revise and amend just slightly, as opposed to me sitting down and writing for 2 hours, it gives me back, let's just say, an hour and a half of my day or my time to be able to focus on other things. And so that's where I think the AI is such a useful and instructive tool and vehicle for us.
So helpful. So helpful. Thank you for that.
Sure.
So as we begin to wrap up, we talk a lot about impact and legacy around here. And you talked already about your work on the board of the hospital. From the team's perspective, what are you most proud of that your team's doing to make an impact in the community? Is it the hospital, or are there some other things?
Yeah, well, certainly I think that's a part of it. But look, I'm on this Don Quixote type crusade of trying to convince people in our world that real estate advisors actually can give you incredibly good advice and very meaningful advice. I think there's this unfortunate stigma that gets attached to this industry, and I think that there are so many really good people out there who, when you tell people you're a real estate agent, it's kind of a snicker until people realize like you're actually adding a ton of value. So I'm on this crusade to sort of make sure that people in our world, the little world that I operate in, understand like the value that we bring from an advice standpoint and why it's so critical. So that's the first thing. I would say, look, on a personal level, there is the Bridgeport Hospital. I went to school in St. Louis, Washington University. There are a lot of people who from the East Coast who go there. I serve as a mentor for young adults and trying to give them a perspective on how they can enter the work world. And then the third thing is I would just say that Cindy and I have a family of 5 kids, and I think we really work hard as parents to make sure that we divide our parenting time and our work time, right? We work together, we live together, we raise kids together. And so I think what's important to me is I'm really proud of the work we do. I'm really proud of the team that we have, but I'm really proud to say that Cindy and I think have been really good parents. At least I like to believe we have, because we care. And I'm not saying that we are the world's best parents. What I am saying is we care, and we care a lot about our kids. We care a lot about business. And I think I'm just really proud to say that we've been able to balance that work and that professional life. And I hope that our legacy will be that not only we created a good business, but that we've created a family where our kids go out into the world and do better for the world. And I know it's cliche, but if we can leave the world a better place, then I think we've done something that matters. And that's something that drives me. It doesn't mean it has to drive everybody, but it's something that drives us. So.
Well, and you have successfully done what we laughed a little bit about at the beginning of the show, which was that you're still married, and you didn't say happily married, but it sounds like you're still happily married, and you guys do have the focus on still making sure that your kids get their parenting time. So give us just a couple of ways that you make sure that happens, some day-to-day operational insight, if you will, on how it is that you balance and make that balance happen so well, both in your marriage, because with most marriages, what I've found is that if you're good parents, you're modeling a good marriage, which means time away from the kids. And and also with your kids, tell us how you feel like the things you're doing that make you feel like this is contributing to how you're able to make that impact and leave that legacy.
Yeah, I think Cindy and I think just on the parenting and business side, I think we're both we deliberately, when we go home, we can't shut the business off, because this, as well as anyone, John, real estate's sort of 24/7. But we're very conscious about when we're at the dinner table with the kids, that the conversations around school or around their friends or just around life. If questions come up about work, we don't shy away from it. Or if they ask if Cindy was able to sell a home, we'll talk about it. But we really try to focus our time when we're with our kids on them. And I take great pride in the fact I was very fortunate. I grew up with a father who unfortunately passed away when I was very young, but he and I had a very dynamic relationship together. And one of my fondest memories, and I still have it, is a shoebox of people that this is where the screen's getting a little fuzzy for some of your viewers who are under 40 years old, is he used to handwrite notes to me around on yellow legal paper in pencil that I've kept over the years. And it was just his advice as a father to a son on life, on maybe I was frustrated that I didn't get a promotion, or maybe I didn't know what would be a great next step with my family, and just life, right? And so he was my sounding board. And I now we've got these 5 children. I've got a 23-year-old who's the oldest, and he's now calling me for similar type advice on job, on relationships. And I find it heartwarming that I can be there in that sort of supportive way that my father was for me. So it is incredibly important to me as a father and I know, and I speak for Cindy in saying this too as a mother, but since I'm the one who's being on this podcast, I'm trying to do the best I can to answer my perspective. It's just incredibly important that we give our kids sort of a framework for what we've learned in life, and hopefully guide them. They're going to have obstacles that they're going to have to overcome on their own. can't walk them across the finish line. We've kind of put them in a good place to, I think, start their lives. But I think we are there to give them that support, that when they fall down, we can help pick them up and give them the guidance to help them keep going, right? And that's really motivational for me. And I just love the fact that we have 5 kids who are not afraid to pick up the phone and call and say, Mom, Dad, I need some help. Or can you please give me some guidance on this, right? It's a very, I think, a healthy dynamic. And look, again, this sounds a little bit like the Brady Bunch. It's, we have our ups and downs, right? I have a daughter who's 13 years old who would rather watch TikTok than talk to me at the dinner table, but we're working on that. So I think the great news is we're very fortunate. We've got happy, healthy kids, and it's important for Cindy and myself to make sure that they get the best guidance they can from us.
The yellow legal pad notes, pencil written notes in a shoebox is so simple yet so profound, that what your dad did for you, and the case of your adult children coming to you asking for advice. You talked about how good it is to give them the advice, but I would say to you, you and Cindy did something right, because they're coming to you asking for the advice and giving you permission to give the advice. So well done, Mom and Dad. Well done on that.
It's nice of you to say.
Hey, so as we quickly wrap up, what are you reading and listening to right now?
So I am a voracious reader. I absolutely love to read. And right now there's 2 books that I'm finishing up at the same time. One, because if you know the book, it's the Charlie Munger's Poor Charlie's Almanac. So it's a tome, right? It's giant. And I don't like lugging it up and down the stairs. So I'd rather just keep a book by my bedside, which is The Toyota Way. And I think it's written by Jeffrey Liker, who's I believe is a professor at Michigan, but it's about Toyota processes, right? How did Toyota become so adept at building their cars and their models when they really were, at that time, Japan was not building vehicles, that they weren't competing well with US cars, and Toyota was the first to do it well. So understanding their processes. And I think Charlie Munger, for those of you who don't know, he's my hero. He's Warren Buffett's right-hand man, who just passed away, unfortunately. But I think just some brilliant insights and decisions. It's a repository for his decision making and sort of critical thinking, which I think is fascinating. And then what I would say, if for your viewers who should be listening to this podcast, because I've listened to several of your podcasts, John, you do a fantastic job. And I think it's great for our industry that people like you are spreading really helpful and insightful tools for the rest of us to use. So kudos to you. I think people should be listening to you. The other podcast that I would say they should get on, if they can and have an interest, is the Founders Podcast by a guy named David Senra, who takes a look at great leaders throughout history. So he'll take entrepreneurs specifically, he'll read their biographies, and then he'll summarize what are the key insights and what has made them successful. So it can be people like Steve Jobs, right? Or Elon Musk, people that everybody kind of knows. But he'll dive into entrepreneurs like James Hill, who most people won't know, but he was one of the most successful founders of Pacific Railway, of the railway industry. And it talks about what he did back in 1910 that is applicable to today's entrepreneur, and how you can learn from keeping your costs low, right? Not outspending what you make. So a lot of great insights on Founders Podcast too. So I think the two great podcasts, yours and Founders, would be great for people to listen to.
Love it. Love it. Thanks for the endorsement there. But also Charlie Munger, a lot of us in the real estate space who've been masterminding together, we all kind of find these circles. We find each other in these circles. Charlie's right-hand man, Chet Holmes, from a day ago, wrote The Ultimate Sales Machine. And a lot of us have based our businesses on that, as Chet built businesses for Charlie. Poor Charlie's Almanac is not something that a lot of us, and so I love that recommendation and the other ones that you made. That's great. Thank you. So, Hey, you're a visionary. You're setting a new vision with a fresh set of eyes for an industry that you're personally you don't have as much history as your wife, but all of our spouses have lived in our industry with us. So you have that too. And as a visionary, what's the most important thing that you see going forward that team leaders need to make sure that they keep their eye on, that they need to do in order to thrive into the future in our business?
Yeah, I think it's a simple answer, but I think it's probably difficult to execute. And what I would say is it's focus on what you can control, right? Markets are going to fluctuate, right? They're cyclical. Interest rates are going to change. Economic downturns are going to happen. You can't control those. So don't focus on them. Focus on what you can control. And to me, that's things like processes. It's people, the people you choose to hire, work with, the clients you choose to work with. And I think you have the ability to control the client experience, right? So if you focus on those things, and I think that great teams have the ability to adapt, they'll innovate, and they're going to stay client obsessed going forward, but it's because they focus on those things that they can control. And it's really hard, right? With all of the noise and everything that comes out around NAR. And you heard a lot of people in the office saying, oh my gosh, this changes. And the reality is, take a really big, deep breath. People still need to buy and sell homes. You're still a critical component of that relationship. And if you do your job incredibly well and deliver something to a client that they need from you, they will continue to call you and work with you. And so I think that's, to me, focus on what you can control and don't spend a whole lot of time on things you can't, because you can't do anything about it.
Great advice from Jason Mudd. Jason, thank you again so much for being on the show. If people want to reach out to you with referrals to Connecticut or for anything else, where can they find you?
Yeah, no, it's nice of you to ask. I'm not great with social media, but you can certainly reach out to me. My email is Jason, Jason, at Cindy Raney, and that's CINDYRANEY, no I in Raney.com. Or you can certainly, Cindy's all over Instagram and Facebook, etc. And I would just say, I would encourage, please pick up the phone and call if you just want to have a conversation and chat about business and maybe my 2 cents. I'd love to get your 2 cents. So I'm always happy to have a conversation. It does not need to be referrals. We certainly appreciate them. It's always a pleasure to sort of talk to other people who have a passion for the business the way we do. And the phone line is always open. I'll give you my cell for whatever it's worth. It's 203-892-5134.
Wow, Jason, that's amazing. Thank you again. Just super grateful for your time. And today, I learned a lot, and I know everybody listening did too. So thanks again for being on the show, Jason.
Well, you're nice to have me. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.